All right. I believe I'm live again. Let me know if you are seeing this. I'm just trying to figure out. I think we had a technical glitch. It cut out for a moment for me. But let me know if you see this. All right, so we're back. We're back live. And yes, that's the beauty of technology is that sometimes even technology wants to chime in and saying, "Hey, take a pause." And so I am taking it as a sign from the universe to take a pause. And we are back. We are back. So wherever I was, I'm going to just quickly chime in and just give a quick recap so that for you, if you're catching this now, fresh again, that here's a quick 30 seconds on what I was sharing just earlier, because I have no idea where I broke off. So essentially, I told you that there are four different functions of the mind. Talked about the ego, that it's really there to protect you, to really give you a container in this world, giving your spirit a container to be able to live and breathe in this time-space reality. Spoke about the lower mind or the thinking mind, which is really there to take action and really giving you this interface with the senses. And then there's the the part where it's getting into the memories, and that's where I was leaving at that point, is the memories of everything that has happened to you in your life. And really, it could be this lifetime, it could be even from previous lifetimes. Sometimes it has this access, but it's how you perceived different things in a way, and it gets stored in this memory bank. So the way that you can tell this voice is speaking is that it brings up a memory. It brings up, hey, do you remember this? Or if you see, it does a lot of that pattern matching where, if you've been burned by fire or if you've uh, had a dangerous situation for yourself that it created unsafety, it immediately shows up. Or even just joyful situations, and hey, if you do this, this is going to be joyful for you. So similar to that experience that you had before. So it does a lot of pattern matching, this memory part of your mind, and it gives you that dialogue saying, hey, Mitesh, this is just like that time where you went to the beach and you had so much fun. This is just like that time where, you tried to climb up that ladder, but you didn't have it balanced. So have it balanced this time, right? So that you don't fall. So it's this memory voice of yours is really there to do a lot of pattern match, but it's limited. If we keep listening to that voice, it's limited to what we've experienced or what we've knowingly or unknowingly taken on, putting into our memory bank. And this is a struggle a lot of us have. Just as I was sharing the story earlier about me being on the mountain and why I was getting these different thoughts is because, at some point I've seen animals in the mountain. I've seen bear tracks. I've seen bear droppings. I've seen coyotes. I've seen all these things. So it's like, you know, my memory bank was sharing like, hey, remember there are animals out here. Remember there are things out here. And that's why I was getting active. This is a exercise in self-awareness of really tapping into all the different functions of your mind. And the last one I want to highlight, so aside from the ego, aside from the thinking mind, aside from the memories, there's the higher mind. And the higher mind, that's the one that should be in charge, in the sense that, you designate as your CEO to make the decisions. Because the higher mind is all about discernment. in the yogic text, they call it buddhi. And buddhi is something that is really this discerning element where you can decide, you can choose, you can consciously step into this world hearing, just like in any organization, the CEO is not just making decisions left and right, but it counsels the CFO, the CTO, the managers, the people, the employees, the clients, the customers, whoever it is, it takes in all of that input and then not only for that organization, but for everybody involved. And so when you get to this discernment place of, I hear the ego, what you're saying, I see what this thinking mind is offering me. I see what my memories are bringing forward to the surface. And here, based on all of that, here's the decision, here's the choice, here's the next thing that is going to be the best thing for us to going forward. And that is your higher mind, to be able to make that distinction. And that's the person, or that's the, not the person, but that's the entity that really needs to be in charge. And you are beyond that. So a little hard to understand, but I think you can grab this. This is the way that I see this, is that you are that witness which is just watching all of it. And you can inject yourself in saying, all right, buddhi, all right, higher mind, where's the way, what's the best way to go right now? And that voice will give you the best course of action. And then you allow your entire being to take a certain action or a thought. And this place of witnessing is very much possible. I was in that, up in the mountaintop, just witnessing, noticing what's going, noticing all the chatter, and noticing that I was not able to relax because of something that was stirring up inside of me. And the problem here, where we experience, we come into this world, just like you drive a vehicle, you are in the driver's seat. Even though you have all these inputs of, sensors telling you, when the tire is flat, or when there needs to be oil in the car there, or you have the ability to turn the AC on or turn the wipers on or honk the horn. You are the driver. You are the person with all of this sophisticated machinery around you to really be the one to figure out what's the best next step. And we come into this world, but we are not necessarily thinking or putting ourselves into that driver's seat. What happens is that we allow everything around us to, instead of being in the driver's seat, we're like this person on a boat without any oars in the ocean, on water, wherever the waves want to take us, that's where the boat will go. If the waves decide to take us to Greenland, then we're going to Greenland. If the wave decides to take us to the US, we're going to the US. And that's how most of us, I have lived my life, much of my life, in that way, where, whatever's coming my way, I'm going to go in that direction. And that's where conscious living comes in. That's where, when you step in with that sense of consciousness, making that conscious choice, knowing what's. And so, what do we do with this now? You can take it a step further. You have this understanding of how the mind works. Now is to figure out, and by the way, we can pause here for just a quick moment. If you have any questions so far, what questions you have about these four elements of the mind, or things that are coming up for you, or thoughts that are coming up for you, uh, feel free to type that into the chat at some point. Be happy to explore that and to see where that's coming from. So I'll take a quick 30 seconds as I catch up on any of the thoughts or comments that are coming this way. Okay. Well, thank you. I see a couple of you are watching. See a bunch of, see Namita, Suzanne, Ava, Ricky. And where to go with this? So no questions at this point, it seems, but I have found that in order to bring this level of self-awareness is take a moment just for yourself, just in this moment right now. Take a moment wherever you're seated, on your chair, on the floor, wherever you are. If you're listening to this, even if you're in your car, be careful with that. But if you're wherever you are, just take a moment to breathe and just let that sensory experience of breath happen. Okay, try that again. Take another breath. Okay, just relax yourself and just observe and see, aside from my voice, which is, of course, playing a factor here, but what are some of the voices, the thoughts that are coming into your mind at this point? You might be thinking, well, what am I thinking? This question is popping up. What am I thinking right now? What are the thoughts that are coming in? Or there might be thoughts about, where's Mitesh going to go with this? Or, I feel a little cold right now. Or whatever those thoughts are, just observe. And you can type them into the chat if you'd like. Just what are those thoughts that are coming up for you in this moment? Okay. And a couple of questions that are coming up. I see, Suzanne, your question here. Does the ego mess with the now? And what I'll say is that the ego really is in the now. And the challenge here is that it is in such a mode of protecting. The ego is very much present because it's really diligent and aware of everything that's going on. But it has one purpose. And so if you want to call it messing with the now, the one purpose is really to help you to to be this identity every single moment, every single possibility. And the trick with the ego is that just knowing and accepting that and honoring that rather than trying to fight it or resist it. And the way you do this is simply acknowledging it and saying, okay, have a dialogue with it. Okay, ego, I see you. I see that you want to protect me here. I see that you're looking out for my safety here. I see that you are really looking out for my benefit here. And when you have that dialogue, the ego's like, all right, you got me. I don't need to, send out the alarms and, make a ruckus in your head to get your attention. That's all the ego wants, is that it just needs a little bit of your attention and knowing that you are with it, that you understand it, that you observe it. And so that is part of the ego. And, another question from Namita here, that am I understanding it right that the higher mind is the soul and the spirit? So the higher mind is not yet that soul element. The higher mind is still has this physicality to it in the sense that it's part of your the four functions. And the higher mind is really the operator, or it needs to be the operator of these four functions. And so the buddhi, which I'll call the higher mind, is is really that, like I said, the CEO, where you're almost like this witness, taking that analogy further. Maybe you can call it the board of directors. You as a spirit are, with all the capacity that you have, is that board of directors in this organization. And you designate the buddhi, or that higher mind, as your CEO to take on all of the the things that you need to do in your day-to-day living, and making that discernment, and really being able to give yourself this powerful part of you where sometimes you can get things what I'll call wrong. I mean, there are no wrong choices, but even the buddhi, it needs refining, in the sense that it will take what it has available and make the best decision according to it. But instead of the buddhi, or the higher mind, taking just from the ego and from the lower mind, the thinking mind, or from the memories, the way you refine it, and this is the work that Shakti and I, and primarily Shakti, has talked a lot about, this intuition, is that you start to listen from that higher part of you, that intuitive voice, and you build that practice for your higher mind to start taking in messages from this spirit element of you, messages from source, messages from your intuition, messages from that higher place. And then making the decisions that you need to make. Discern. Even with that, you have your higher mind discern that all these voices are coming in. So there's another element outside of these four functions, which is spirit giving you that direct connection. And that vast part of you, that higher part of you, which you can really identify as yourself. So one little trick, one little mechanism to help you navigate it, and I know this can get a little confusing, is that instead of saying, I want XYZ, change the I to it. The ego, it wants this. The mind, it wants this. The senses, it wants this. My higher mind, it wants this. And then you start to practice being more of that place of a witness when you use the word it, instead of you identifying as this individual. So it's one little mechanism that can help to move things along in the world. And so from the next part here is that there are inputs that you have. And the way this works is that ultimately you take an action in the world. But before that action, a thought comes before that. And before a thought, there is an emotion that generates those thoughts. And before those emotions, there are beliefs. And so I almost spell it out as beta: beliefs, emotions, thoughts, and actions. And you reverse engineer it, because the action, let's just take one action, for example. You can, if you think of one thing that you did yesterday, or even early this morning, that sticks out for you, what's an action that you've taken? For me, I took an action of reaching out to a potential contact in India. And that was my action. The thought was, hey, I'd like to get some work, potentially to work with in India, or to make some presentations, or to deliver a chat there. The emotion was, hey, I'm feeling that this work that I'm doing shouldn't just be limited to the US audience. It needs to go there. And the belief before that, action, that thought, that emotion, the belief is that it was in a way that was, more of a bit of a fear-based belief. Like, why am I limiting myself? Why am I playing small? Or not even a question, but that's more of a question, but I am playing small. That was the belief. And that belief resulted in an emotion, resulted in a thought, resulted ultimately in an action. And we have so many of these beliefs that we've taken on. And part of the game is just working through these beliefs that constantly play. And this beliefs are, a lot of the beliefs get stored in this subconscious, this memory bank from us of based on how things have unfolded, based on how you perceive things, you've created these beliefs. And the trick here is to get to that belief place, because once you release those beliefs, once you release that pattern, that train of that thought, or that train of energy, you let it go, and then you open yourself up to, you can decide what beliefs that you want. You can be conscious in your choosing of, I choose to have these beliefs, this belief system. And oftentimes we're very unconscious with it, that we don't even recognize what beliefs we have. And that's part of the work, is really to dig and to discover, what are these beliefs that are lying all the way in this core of our being, in our physical being here. And when we get to know that, when we get to understand and be able to discover that, that's where this mindfulness practice, this is where this self-awareness practice really helps. Is rather than just walking through life in a very robotic way and just kind of doing everything one mechanism at a time, it's you take it a step further and really look at, why am I taking these actions? And work your way backwards. I'm taking this action because there's this thought. I'm taking this thought because there's this emotion. I have this emotion because there's some belief. And that's one way I've found, just to look, kind of work through that chain of where does this originate from. That's going to be helpful. And once you find that origination place, then you can make that conscious decision to release it, or replace those beliefs with something that's more empowering. That's something that you can say that, all right, I no longer want, and just like for the technology folks out there, different programs that are running, right? These beliefs, consider them as different programs that are lines of code that are embedded in your overall functioning and how you see the world. And you can debug and saying, all right, this line of code is not really helping me, so I'm going to replace it with something else. That's the power, that's the ability that you have to go back and do that. So the way this works is just like that. You have these components of your mind, and then you have this discerning element which can take in all the input. But ultimately, you do want to take input from from what you have as your faculties, but also seeing what's that voice of source that's coming in. So, and once you have that, now you can make an educated decision, call it that way, of how to move forward. And I'm just touching on a question here is that Ava Thomas's question. So I am beyond higher mind, pure awareness. And you're observing the play of four minds: ego, thinking mind, memory, and higher mind. Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that, but the thing is that we don't necessarily identify with that. And that's the challenge, is that ideally that's how it's meant to work, is that we observe, we see things playing out, and we have that relationship. The pitfall that we tend to fall into is that we identify, because the ego is so strong, and it's okay. I mean, it's just being aware of it, that the ego is so strong that it wants us to just know that, hey, we are this individual. I am Mitesh Kapadia. I am, you know, living in California. I have all these attributes that the ego ties itself to. And then we, really take a back seat because the ego is really just having this loud voice. Like I said earlier, whenever that ego kicks in, acknowledge it, accept it, allow yourself to just saying, I hear you. And then that puts you back into that space of a witness, that puts you back into that space of really just observing and watching and witnessing. And that's really what I want to share. The bulk of what I want to share today is that just start with that. Just notice, if you don't do anything else aside from today, is just to notice and be aware of what voice is speaking at any given time. And use, when you listen to it, use that language of, oh, it is saying this, or this mind is saying, it is saying this, or the ego, it wants to do this. And when you make that practice, now you're starting to have, this understanding of all the different voices. If you walk into a room of strangers and you just hear different voices, it's hard to identify who is what. But after a moment, you can start to be more refined and saying, oh, this voice is constantly talking about this, or has like a little trend. Or, even if you go into a family function, or, a group of friends, you close your eyes, just listen, you can tell which voice is speaking because you built that familiarity over time. And that's the practice, is that in order to master your mind, you first need to understand what are the voices that are playing out. Who are the players? Because if you don't know the players, it's going to be difficult to make sense of everything that's going on in there. And so I'm open to some questions here. Any thoughts, any ideas, anything that is coming up for you at this point as we have this dialogue? All right, so keep them coming. And I simply want to highlight this. This is very much possible for you. It doesn't take a lot of work. Initially, it may take some effort, but it won't take a lot of work to recognize the different voices that are playing out. Once you know the types of directions these voices take, it becomes easier. And then, like I said, let's say you have this moment that you took an action, that you had these emotions play out. Once again, not denying them. I'm not saying that you try to deny any of those actions or thoughts, or the hardest part is the tendency to want to push things away, especially if they're not pleasant. I'll give you that example of I reached out to somebody and it gave me a moment of like, oh, I reached out because there was this element of it which was playing out from fear, playing out from like this fear, like this belief that really wasn't the most empowering. So even before I take that action next time, I can say that, all right, before I reach out to somebody, I want to make sure that I am coming from the right place, that I am grounded in in my beliefs before I take that action. Because that will lead to a result that is probably more what I'm looking for versus if I keep reaching out from a place of fear, if I keep placing, if I keep reaching out from a place of these beliefs that are not as empowering, then it it will create results that follow along. You simple idea, not necessarily this idea of the quality of input is going to give you the quality of output. So you want those high quality beliefs to be at the forefront or at the cornerstones of the actions that you take. And that's the refinement process, is noticing, observing, witnessing, using all these faculties of your mind to help you. And once you come to that place, things become a bit more easier. And yes, you will have those days, which, I've had many days, even in the past week, where I was overtaken by my own nonsense, my own mind, my own crap, if you want to call it. But ultimately, stepping out of that and finding the different healing elements which can be helpful. So, whether it's speaking to a friend, having that dialogue, or working with a coach or a counselor, or a mentor, or even having your own self-care practice, there's something that you need to find that will help you to anchor yourself. And a lot of it comes from a place of safety. So these are the things that we could talk about in another, is that why having that sense of safety is so important for you to step beyond this ego alert of like, you're not safe, you're not safe, you're not safe, is that let's get this ego to chill out for a moment by letting it know that it's safe, that at all times it's okay. And then from there's a lot of integration with your own truth, with your own integrity, with your ability to play in the world. You can't play in the world if you're not feeling safe. And the ego won't allow you to do that if it doesn't feel safe. And so we'll talk about that as another topic at some other point. But for today is this is what I wanted to share with you: how to be the master of your mind, noticing. And so just as a quick recap, 4 functions of your mind: the ego, thinking mind, memories, or that subconscious, and the higher mind. And the higher mind, that buddhi, can really be the discerning factor of taking in all of what the other voices are saying and then making that decision, being that CEO of your being. But also taking in consultation from that higher part of you, that spirit which you are, which what you can call as you. And then, so that's the overall mechanism. And then you can go into more granularity of like, well, why are certain things playing out in my life? Why am I always taking these actions? Why am I always feeling this way? Why am I always thinking this way? And go back to your beliefs and rework those beliefs, shift them, change them, honor them, and letting them go with that sense of, you've served me for so long. And now I choose to go in a different direction going forward. This is where meditation, instead of just kind of closing your eyes and breathing, you can take this into your meditation and saying, all right, what has happened? And let's break it down. Let's take a moment to see, just like I was as I started this live today, about being on the mountaintop and just noticing all the things that were distracting me. It took me about 30 seconds to really integrate all of that and saying, okay, why is all this happening? So with practice, you can get better at it and start to realize why you're acting in this certain way, what's going on that's creating these places of behavior, and really shifting it to be more and more aligned with your truth. And that's one of the reasons why we have this brand called spiritual alignment, of really aligning with spirit, aligning, bringing yourself from a place of unconscious, robotic living to being aligned with spirit. And so tune in next Sunday, similar time, 9 a.m. Pacific time, and translate that to whatever time zone that you are in. And we will continue, and Shakti will take on the next topic next week. And we'll be here every Sunday so far, and really just sharing insights into the body, the mind, the emotions, the spirit, all of these things that we sometimes don't really talk about, but really should be talking about. So thank you again, everyone. Appreciating you. Much love to you, and look forward to connecting. And feel free to shoot me a message, whatever platform you found me on. Uh, Feel free to shoot me a message. Happy to answer any questions that come up for you. But for today, I want to just leave you with, you have this ability to really step into your power, understanding this mechanism, and be in that driver's seat, because you are in this vehicle that's well beyond a Rolls Royce, a Lamborghini, a Ferrari. Put them all together and time, multiply it by 10. You are in this beautiful vehicle, and put yourself in the driver's seat, and you'll find that you can lead the life you want to live. Thank you, everyone. I'm signing off, and I will look forward to hearing.